another episode of the BioHub. Today we have a special guest, Michael Castagna, CEO of MannKind. Michael has over 25 years of experience in marketing, sales, and business development across both Fortune 500 companies and biotech startups. Under his leadership, MannKind has grown into a major player in the field of endocrine and orphan lung diseases, bringing innovative therapies like Afrezza, the only inhaled ultra-rapid acting insulin, to market. And in this episode, Michael shares his journey, the challenges and triumphs of leading MannKind, and the future of the company's groundbreaking technologies. We'll also dive into his passion for turning around struggling companies and the lessons he's learned from navigating the biotech landscape. Let's get started. How are you, Michael? Things going well?
I'm doing great. Cheers.
Perfect. So just want to start off on your background and who you are. So you obviously got an extensive background in healthcare and pharma. Could you just share your journey and then what ultimately led you to become CEO of MannKind?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it goes back almost 30 years ago when I decided to go into pharmacy school. And I was just at a kid's birthday party this weekend with a guy from pharmacy school. I go, I've known you almost 30 years next year. Isn't that sad? He's like, where'd it go? I said, I know. That's what happens. We get old. So I wanted to be a pharmacist. And then as I was going through my curriculum, I thought maybe a doctor, maybe not. And then I decided, being able to bring medicine to patients around the world. When I was working in HIV, I could see the work that was happening in Africa and in America and Europe and really saving lives and transforming lives in the late 90s. Got me excited to dedicate my career to the pharmaceutical industry. I thought that was the biggest impact that I could help make on society versus a local pharmacy or a hospital system. You can impact the local communities in those roles, but you couldn't impact the world. And I really felt that would be exciting, right? To be able to make decisions on bringing a drug development forward or a business combination or anything around those types of things that change patients' lives. And I really practiced pharmacy for almost 15 years, between pharmacy technician all the way through when I graduated, and really saw firsthand how the work we do as an industry helps patients, across communities. And I worked in poverty-stricken areas to ultra 1% areas, and so you're able to really see the different dynamics in those different markets, and what people suffer from and how they deal with the cost challenges they face, etc.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then what ultimately led you to become CEO of MannKind?
So, a lot of my career focused on doing life cycle management, innovation, and rejuvenation of businesses. And I really enjoyed that. I was working for great companies like Bristol Myers, Novartis, Amgen, and had a great career, had a lot of fun, met a lot of great people. We made a lot of great impact on society. And then MannKind, had this little diabetes drug that I was a shareholder in the company, in fairness, in 2014. And when they sold the rights to the product, I didn't see anything else in the pipeline. So I had sold my stock and not paid attention and had a gain that got approved. I was happy. And then a year and a half later, I see, Valencia, California, MannKind gets rights returned. And I said, well, where's Valencia? Because I'm not from California. And so I Google it. It's an hour away. I'm like, I could do an hour and a half commute each way. It's not the end of the world. And most people may or may not know, I didn't have a father growing up. And when I found out who he was, he had passed away from diabetes complications. So I didn't want to really work in diabetes personally. But then I saw this inhaled insulin. I saw the patient, posting their CGMs online in 2016. And I thought, wow, this drug is making a huge difference in people's lives. Maybe, if I look into what they're doing, what they did in the trials, and why Sanofi didn't quite make it, if we could triangulate all those insights, we could turn this around faster. Well, that journey was much harder than we thought once I joined. And I emailed the CEO at the time and said, hey, I'd love to come join you and help turn this around. And that's really how the beginning started. And that was 2016. And here we are 8 years later. And we're just literally I don't know when this is going to come out publicly, but we're just about to hopefully receive our pediatric trial results, which is one of the things I've been working on for 5 or 6 years now. And if you ask me, what's really going to continue to drive MannKind and drive our future, it's not only the innovation technology platform in our partnership with United, but it's Afrezza as well. And the big thing that we've been waiting on for years has been this pediatric trial data coming out in a few weeks here. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be here. We're finally well capitalized. I can talk about that journey in the company. And we'll do almost 275 million in revenue this year. So it's an exciting time frame from 16 when it was zero, and losing 100 plus million to profitability in 2024. So amazing turnaround, amazing journey. Harvard Business School wrote up a case study on us. It's been great. The shareholders, the patients, the employees, everybody has participated in how we got here. So very thankful to be leading the company right now.
That's incredible. When you hear about how you joined as well, a message to the current CEO saying, "Look, yeah, I'm interested in joining. I'm interested in helping you guys out." Um, did you do that before MannKind with those kind of things or not? Or
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my jobs, either people knew I do turnarounds. Most drugs that don't launch well the first time never come back. I mean, I'm well aware of the stats. It's probably over 90%. I think when you look at my track record in all my companies, the drugs I've worked on have all continue to do well even after I left, which has been great to see. And Afrezza, unfortunately, has not done what I expected it to do in the time frame we thought. And some of that was the overhang on the company. The company, what most people may not realize from an investor perspective, was severely in debt, really restrictive debt, warrants in its cap structure, and had no cash or no ability to get cash in the next year or two to pay for it. And so we were all intents and purposes heading for bankruptcy when I became CEO in 2017. And I remember the stock going down to 70 cents a share, $70 million market cap roughly, and calling billionaires trying to say, hey, let's take this private if we could. And we really couldn't move fast enough. The stock started moving in a good direction, and really, I thought as a troubled company, it privately held would have been better. But then as the market cap went up significantly, it was harder to kind of justify that premium. But we made it happen, and we fixed the debt, and we paid everybody back all the money we owed them, and we kept the drug on the market and moved the pipeline forward. And that was really a balance of how much do you invest to grow diabetes as a public company where you've lost $3 billion already versus the pipeline forward, which we know has 3 to 7 year paybacks. And so we made a very delicate balance of funding the pipeline, which started with Tyvaso, dry powder inhalation, which now led to the next 2 products that went into humans this year. So it's been a really exciting journey of the technology, the platform, some small M&A, to expansion of diabetes and the studies we ran in diabetes. This year's been a wonderful year of readouts and positive information so far, and we got 3 more months of the year, so hopefully we finish strong.
That's awesome. And let's just talk about your current platform, because, like you say, when you first came in, you had one asset. I'm guessing that was a strategic decision, like you said. Just walk us through that decision, and then also more broadly about the current pipeline and what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. When I got here, as a pharmacist, you dispense albuterols and Venolins and, these Atrevents of the world, but you don't know much about the inhalation technology that backed them, right? You just dispense a canister or whatever. And when I got here, our employees would say, Mike, we have the best technology in the world. And I said, well, then how come no one else is knocking on your door to license it? Or why is there no other products on the platform? And, it was always feedback that we never had any money. And I looked at the past money and I said, we had $3 billion. We spent it all on Afrezza, so let's not do that. We really diversified our investments. And because I did believe the technology was different, but we didn't have any data to really back that up. And so other than some lung scans and showing you where the particles went. And so I funded a trial back in 2017, if I recall, called, it was for treprostinil. We called it Tret-T at the time. And we could show you that we could deliver 3 times the amount of powder than the nebulizer could deliver into the lungs without side effects. And so that was like, wow, this technology really is different. We're seeing something that, hasn't been done with the leading competitor in that space. And then I also funded a study on Afrezza that showed, could we dose properly and get better outcomes? And so we got 2 results in 2017 that showed, in 2018, I think the Tyvaso read out, that really showed that our technology was unique and different. And that's when we pivoted the company in 2019 to orphan lung disease, and we killed anything that wasn't orphan lung disease. And then we bought another small company in 2020 called Oral, which is now our clofazimine 101 in trials. We started building up that orphan lung business, and today that's really the shining star of the company. And then we knew Afrezza was going to take time to turn around because the clinical development program had a lot of flaws that had to be fixed. And that just took time. There was nothing, without money, without people, you couldn't go faster. So we either have money and no people, or we have people and no money. So we finally had both over the last couple of years. And then COVID hit in the middle of all this stuff that we could imagine was a burden for everybody.
Yeah.
But we saved the company. The drug is doing well. The company's doing great. The technology is advancing on multiple products now. And the scale there in the facility in Danbury, Connecticut is amazing. So, I think we have a large moat that creates barriers for people to duplicate what we've done, invested hundreds of millions of dollars in manufacturing.
Yeah. Was there a point when you're looking at this turnaround where you thought, yeah, we've really turned it around now, we're back on the rise, or is it very much like this step, this step?
I think the big thing was making sure people trusted the management team. There was a lot of history in the company. It's been public for a long time, and there's not a lot of trust on Wall Street with the company. So I think that was the first thing: is continue to say what you're going to do what you say, and deliver. And we did that consistently. And it took a couple of years for people to build that trust up. And then I think I think I remember in 2000, I went home to my wife and I said, I think we finally saved the company. Like I was finally past the point where I'm like, I think we're going to be fine from this point forward. And then COVID hit. And then I was like, what the heck? So, we did everything we could. And then I'm like, oh, I guess we're going to have to figure this one out. And so then we took pay cuts, we took bonus cuts. We did everything we could to save the company across the employees. And we made some tough choices in that time frame and took some heat. And I'll give our employees credit. Nobody quit. Everybody stuck by us in 2020 through 21 as we got through COVID and made that work. And that was in 21. We did the sale leaseback of the building, and that gave us $100 million. And then UT was on the cusp of getting approved. So we kind of felt at that point we were going to be good. We were good for the perpetuity we could see. So really, 2020 I felt good, and then COVID, and then 21 I really felt good.
Yeah,
that we had enough cash to see through any obstacles that could come our way. And the whole premise was this company raised a lot of money, but it's time to start being profitable and growing. And that was really the focus in 22 and beyond. Is let's not burn through this cash. Let's treat it with every scarcity we could imagine, and make sure the company continues to be successful. And really, it's been a great story since then.
Yeah, and you mentioned during COVID that no one left, but why do you think that was? I mean, it was a good idea.
We do a pulse survey every 6 months on our employees, and I think there's a clear alignment to the role that people serve in our company and what they enjoy and want to give back to society. And whether that's in manufacturing, knowing you're producing a life-saving drug like treprostinil or nintedanib, or our Afrezza product, you're making a difference in patients' lives. And we try to do a good job about bringing patients to the factory and to webcasts so that people can see the efforts of their work firsthand. If you're in the sales force on Afrezza, either you might have type 1 diabetes yourself or type 2, and you've seen Afrezza impact your life in a positive way, and you want to help bring that to others, and you're very frustrated that it's not more successful. Or you have a family member impacted by diabetes. So a lot of our sales force are truly just warriors, I'll say, fighting every day for patients to get access to our product and to make sure doctors give it a chance. Those people are pretty loyal and dedicated, and that's important to us. It's important to them. It's important to the caregivers. And they're really excited about our pediatric, hopefully, readout. That's going to be a whole other launch for us going into 25 and 26. And then home office, the people working on the orphan lung business and growing that. So I just think, it's a 420 person strong company and growing. And the connection to our mission and our future is very, very strong to our employee base. And that's important.
You must have nailed that as well, though, with, making sure everyone is motivated, that the mission's possible. I think sometimes in biotech that the road is long, and keeping people motivated along the way, celebrating every little win is so important. So I think you've probably played down the aspects of the environment that you've created as well.
Yeah, I don't play it down. I think it's a team effort, and I think our team has done an amazing job, right? Whether that's the commercial organization, the medical organization, the research group. I mean, everyone here works hard. Everyone cares immensely about the company, the shareholders, the patients we serve. And, that passion comes through, whether it's me from the top of the house or to our employees on the front lines. You're making a difference. And I think that is hard when you're in an early stage company where, pick a disease X, you got 15 years in front of you. That's a long journey. At least with us, we're getting the small wins on Afrezza, we're getting the wins on Tyvaso, DPI, we're getting the wins on the pipeline. I always joke with people, you're lucky to see one drug approved in your lifetime if you worked on something. Our employees will see 3 or 4. We already got 2 approved and a couple more coming. So, and these aren't 10 years out. These are in the next 3 to 5 years. And so we feel
Amazing.
very good about, the products, the journey, the technology. The dry powder technology we have is very unique, and I do think is a competitive advantage. Really helps patients take a very simple dose. I'll show you just quickly. You can see it. It is our little inhaler, and you just that's it.
And that's easy as that.
Yeah. And so that was for my Starbucks this morning I had. And so, I think if I have my CGM one, I could show you my screen, and within a half hour, my sugars will start dropping or be stable. And that's real time control that, you can't get with injectable insulin. And that's a real big difference in our technology and how it delivers to the lung, how it gets into the bloodstream. And when you think about oxygen, you're just breathing, right? And you don't think about consciously that you're oxygenating your blood. Well, that's what happens when you're inhaling the insulin. It's getting directly into your blood in a half a second and through the lungs. And it's already hitting the liver, and it's already stopping the postprandial rise. It just works so quickly that's what gives us this unique advantage in diabetes, and what you see in treprostinils, that you want that deep, consistent lung delivery. And that's where we look for targets that require either deep lung penetration or across the lung penetration. And so, people ask me, why don't you do basal insulin? Well, we could, but a once a day shot's not going to be that bad. Could you do GLPs and weight loss? We could, but once a week shot's not that bad. So it's also, how do you improve a quality of life of somebody as we go forward with the decisions we make, and making life difference in the treatment effect that you give to a patient is important.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad you showed us that. And I wanted to, I suppose, now just take a pivot, and it's something I'm always seriously interested in asking about, and that's a bit on your mindset and who you are. You've obviously been part of several turnaround projects in your career. I say, what draws you to these challenges, or sometimes they just catch you. And then also, what strategies do you believe are key to successfully revitalizing these companies?
Yeah. I always look back and say, what does drive me to do what I do every day? Because I don't need to do it the way I do it. I don't need to jump into these fires. But I think firefighters are drawn to fight fires, and police officers put your journey in life every day. I think you're drawn to something you love for some strange reason, that you develop a special skill, whatever that is, whether it's fighting fires, protecting people, teaching kids. For me, it was helping people, learn about drugs in a way that they didn't maybe learn the first time or second time. It's creating business models that nobody could see, that I find intellectually challenging and exciting. I built biosimilars 15 years ago when people couldn't even say the word. And, now it's like the talk of the town, right? I'm like, I was doing this in 2008, 2010. And I remember telling my employees back then, we're making history. This was literally 15 years ago, right? And so think about that. And I said, we're making history. Now what do you have today is a multi-billion-dollar market that everyone's trying to figure out. And government's trying to argue PBMs are corrupt. And there's a lot of truth to what people were saying. And I saw this back 15 years ago, and no one would do anything about it. So, I'm not as optimistic that society's going to do something about it 15 years later here in the U.S., but I think biosimilars are a necessary product for patients and society and insurance companies to free up capital. So I just like doing something that other people wouldn't do. And there was no one. People always ask me, "Hey, do you have a blueprint that just works every time?" And I go, "I wish it was that easy." Every company I've gone in, it's been a unique situation. I've had to be flexible. My teams have had to be flexible. But a lot of times, as you have a lot of listeners, it takes courage to change out people. And what I mean by that is, if the team that you took over for a company was doing great, that job wouldn't be open for me to join. And that's a hard thing for people to come in. Sometimes you come in as a new leader and you're like, hey, I'm going to keep everything status quo. Well, that status quo got you to where you were. And so how do you what change are you going to make? What people are going to stay on the bus? What people aren't going to make it? And then what's that cascade over time? Because not everyone you can just fire in a day. And some people have a unique skill that you wasn't appreciated maybe in the current structure that you inherited. And so it's really about understanding what are the key business issues you're trying to address, who are the best people on the bus that you can get in those right jobs, and then who do you have to bring in from the outside to drive that outside voice into the company. And I would say that's a lot easier said than done. And that's probably my skills. Like, how do I get the right people around me to navigate these challenges in ways, whether it's market access, medical, marketing, sales. There's no one solution, but the magic to me is in putting the teams together. And that's been the fun part. And that's a unique skill that I think I've been able to harness over the years. And then seeing things in a business model that no one else could see, and fighting for it when you believe in it. And there are many examples there that, in biosimilars, we had a flexible sales force. I remember coming to California flying. I never lived here back in 2009. We flew like 5 employees in to drive 1,000 patient conversion on one of the insurance companies. And if you told a Merck or Bristol Myers, like, we're going to fly 10 reps from around the country into California for the next month, and they would say, what, are you kidding me? Like, that's not how you do this.
Yeah.
So I think it's having those models and those flexibilities within those models to make the decisions you need to make. Bristol Myers, I remember I left in '05 because I felt it was just too restricted, and I didn't want to have these golden handcuffs that I didn't quite know what that meant 20 years ago. I just knew they kept me there, and I was like, I don't want to be stuck. So I left, went to a startup, and then did a few other great jobs, and then came back 5 years later because Bristol Myers wanted me to come back, and I said, I really don't want to come back. I left for these reasons, and I love the company. They taught me a lot, and they said, we'll give you the freedom to do what you need to do. And I didn't believe them, in fairness, and I went back, and they did give me the freedom, and
Wow.
it wasn't big risks. It was like, hey, if you want to become a multi-billion-dollar product, sponsoring the dinner event at the key society meeting might let you get in front of KOLs, might let them hear about your product. Oh no, we can't be a premium sponsor. Why not? Abbott is, and Pfizer is, and how do you want to compete against Amgen and Abbott if you're not willing to compete at the sponsorship level? Right, you got to act big if you're going to be big.
Yeah.
And things like that were considered high risk. I'll say at the time that really weren't that high of a risk, or you didn't have the budget, but you had to go fight for the budget. And those little things make a big difference in the long run. I think about there was one time we were at Amgen. We were bringing Omnipod over from diabetes to Neulasta to help patients who have cancer not come back the next day and get the shot. And the product was struggling a little bit. And some people wanted to kill it. And I said, no, you can fire me. We're going to go one more time and try it again. And that product turned out to be Owen Pro. It turned out to be a multi-billion-dollar product. And everyone was really proud of the work that the team did. And it's an example where, for me, it was like, we're given the shot every time you get cancer. You got to get this white blood cell booster, I'll call it. And people come back the next day. Like, why couldn't we put that in a device that delivers the next day? The company had started that work, and it was hard work to get a drug device combo with the FDA, but we did it. And I think the celebration there for Amgen was huge, a couple $1 billion in sales. And think about the hundreds of thousands of patients who didn't have to go back after getting their chemo.
Yeah.
Which I just never had cancer, thank God, but I could not imagine driving an hour in LA traffic the day after getting chemo to get one shot to go back home and pay for $100 for parking. Like, it's just amazing what people go through to fight this disease, and then be told, "Oh, you got to come back tomorrow." Like, I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
And so it's just things like that we brought innovation to patients that really changed, hopefully, their life and their caregivers' lives. That I look back on that we're really proud of. I worked on I helped put together the one pill once a day HIV regimen back in '04 with Gilead and Bristol Myers. I remember putting the strategy together to kill our own brands and go partner with somebody. And we did that together. And that was another great example of, reestablishing HIV to be one pill once a day was a huge milestone at that time.
Yeah.
So, all the turnarounds have had some unique combination of product innovation, business innovation, partnership innovation, cross-pollinating technologies, new device launches. And so, like I said, there's no one size fits all, but it's just having a way to think about business in a way that other people can't see.
Yeah. And a lot of guts and courage based on what you said, and in terms of the team, slight risk taking, but calculated risks.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I can't tell you enough people don't speak up when they have a strong opinion, or they're not confident in themselves, or they're afraid of the politics within a company. And I would just tell people, do what's right, make the tough decisions. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. And as long as you're right more than you're wrong, you're not making a catastrophic decision. Never put a patient's life in harm. But you got to make those tough decisions. You got to make them fast.
Yeah.
I always tell people, 3 months in delay of R&D is like $1 billion at the end of a drug's life cycle. So when you're struggling with $10,000, $50,000 decisions, I'm like, guys, at the end of the day, if we lose 3 months of time, this is how much money you're losing on the back end of a product's life cycle. And so you got to move fast. So people know I push hard, and part of the reason I push hard is every day does count in terms of helping patients. And then when you lose all your revenue at the end of a drug's life, that's huge money that that employ a lot of people. So you want to keep those curves going as long as possible, and keep the launches as tight as possible.
Yeah. I think what you said as well, about speaking up, I think that's so important. We always say something at Avetics that we don't want to hire yes men. We want people who will speak up, and they won't just follow what you say. That's dangerous. If you're a leader and you have a bunch of yes men around you, and you say something, they go, yeah, let's do it. You need someone who's going to challenge those opinions and help you think that through, and let the best ideas win.
Yeah. No, That's right. And people know I'm stubborn. I'm a thick-headed Italian guy, and so that's just part of my flaw. But I always tell people I'll never hold a grudge. I'll always enjoy a debate, and at the end of the day, we may not agree, but sometimes we have to agree to disagree, and they're right. And sometimes I'll be wrong, and
Yeah.
vice versa. But if you don't make a decision to go forward, then you're both worse off. And so, but not speaking up, I think many times I've seen people cause more harm than good, right? And so speak up when you have an opinion, because saying something 3 to 6 months later, or saying I told you so, or that person has a big ego and let them fall on their face. Who gets hurt in that? The patients at the end of the day, the reps that are fighting on the front lines, the manufacturing people working their butt off to make stuff, right? And so you really got to be a good team, and I think create a good team atmosphere. And politics is one of those things that exist in companies, and you see people get ahead, and you're like, well, they just kissed ass, and that's true half the time. But I always say smart people generally get ahead, and making decisions helps you get ahead.
Yeah.
So
I
speak
think
up, make decisions. Try.
generally risk takers get ahead. You look at some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. They've taken massive risks. You take what, like Elon Musk, for example. Like he went and started a space company and
Yeah,
electric
no,
car
he's got his
company.
network.
They're not unrisky things to go and do.
No, and I think that's actually so. People may not know MannKind was founded by a gentleman named Alfred E. Mann, and Al Mann was a huge risk taker. I would say a visionary like Elon Musk, and bet his own self net worth many times over. I mean, his kids, when I talk to them, say my dad came home and said he mortgaged a house and he may be homeless in a year. But this is who Al Mann was. He would take, if he believed in something, he would take all of his chips and put it on the table and go for broke. And sometimes it worked out, and sometimes it didn't, right? And in Frezza's case, it didn't work out the way he expected. He spent $1 billion,
Yeah.
but in many other cases, it did work out. And so, but a lot of his money went to charity, went to good causes, but he was a true visionary of 60 years who started 17 companies, and would
Wow.
bet his own money many times. And that risk taking, I think that's what attracted me to MannKind. To your earlier question, was the ability to have a culture that is risk taking, that is calculated, that is not afraid to go against the grain or try something completely different. And everything we do, unfortunately, MannKind is really driving through a wall. Whether it's the FDA trying to convince them, hey, we got a new technology or a new way to deliver a drug device combo that's never been approved, a new way to deliver insulin that didn't change in 100 years, right? These are bold moves that you got to continue to have confidence in every day you push forward. It's much easier to say no and pull back. It's much harder to push forward in the face of adversity, whether that's coming from shareholders, it's coming from payers, it's coming from your employees. It's harder to say yes than no. And that's where you got to have conviction and self-confidence to go against all odds, right? And I would say Afrezza is one of those examples where any other company would not be alive today. The drug did 60 million, lost a bunch of money, and people would not keep it alive. But I kept it alive to get the new data, to let the data drive the decisions, because I believed that was what was missing, and that my conviction behind that is 100%. I'm willing to bet my entire career on it, and so so far that's paid off. I mean, the data's coming out really good. We just showed last week we got twice as many people to gold in the standard of care. That's a huge benefit to society when 75% of people are not at gold. And so, these are the things that I had conviction on that now the data is starting to finally show that I was right. Unfortunately, it's taken 7 years, but we didn't have the money or the people to do it. Now we do. And so now it's a matter of getting the last step in my journey here is the pediatric data. And if that comes out pretty good, then we'll be pretty damn excited about our future.
Amazing. And I suppose, I don't know how far ahead you look, but beyond that next data coming through, where do you see MannKind going in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah. No, I mean, I look 5, 10 years out all the time, and so I think when you're in competitive sports or racing, you're always told, look ahead, don't look in front of you, because if you're looking in front of you, you're just following the person that's not winning. And if you want to get ahead of them, you got to look in front of them and anticipate which curve you're going to take or which angle you're going to go inside or outside. And I think that's true of drug development and running companies. You can't worry about the next quarter. And we actually don't give guidance on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, because I might have to make different decisions in the next 6 to 12 months because of something that comes up. And so you got to either trust the management team does have a 5 to 10 year view of the company and a good track record of delivering against those expectations. Because my job is to The next 3 years of this company is already done, right? Meaning Afrezza is either going to get good data or it's not. The patients are going to enroll or they're not, right? These trials we started 5 years ago, they're now moving. And so if I had a quarterly view, I would have never funded these trials because they take guts to fund when you had no money. And so even now we're making decisions for 2030 and beyond, right? And so I'm not even worried about 27, 28, 29. I'm thinking, okay, what do we do to launch our next drug in 2030 and beyond? Do we look at an acquisition? Do we buy a new technology? Do we put another product on the platform? Because I feel pretty good about the next 3 to 5 years and what we have between Afrezza, Tyvaso, MannKind 101 and 201. Those are going to keep us quite busy. But now what's the next innovation? And when you look at companies, I saw Novo Nordisk last couple weeks ago had their earnings. I think it was almost 100% of their revenue is going generic or biosimilar by 2032. So think about that. Like they got to replace 100 billion in revenue in the next 7 years. That's practically impossible. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, that's a much taller order than I have. Like I just got to keep doubling, tripling revenue. I'll be happy. They have to replace the revenue because of biosimilars, and that's a much harder task. No matter how much you buy, $100 billion is 1/3 of the U.S., 1/4 of the U.S. Drug market.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be easy, and so, these GLPs are doing so great. That's great for society, but to replace that and get the next wonder drug, I think is an amazingly hard task. And when I look at out, we have pretty much growth for the next 10 to 15 years, and being able to run a public company and say we expect double-digit growth for the foreseeable future, with no generic entrants, no generic threat, and nothing but innovation launching and hopefully reading out. And I don't need everything to work great. I just need half the stuff to work. And so that's why I always tell people, like, something's not going to go right. Believe me, it's pharmaceutical development. But as long as on average they go right, we're good. And so we got a lot of good stuff happening, and I do expect most will go right, but I don't expect everything to go right, but they should.
Sounds incredible. And you know what, like, after listening to the journey, you deserve it. And I think, let's go into this last question. So if you could have dinner with any scientist or innovator, past or present, who would it be and why?
I think there's two people. I'll pick one dead and one alive. The one that's alive that I've really admired over the last, pretty much since pharmacy school, is Roy Vagelos. And he's a known legend. He sat on the board of Regeneron, helped those guys get started in the 90s. He ran Merck as CEO. He's a scientist-driven person. And, what I like his story is, like, when Merck was, studying the river blindness drug, right? He kept it going and gave it away for free because he was helping people cure a disease that made them blind in Africa. And so, as a company, like, sometimes it's not just about profits, right? It's about making the difference in millions of people's lives around the world. And when you travel to these third world countries, they can't afford our technology. They can't afford our drugs. So how do we help them advance their society? How do we help them grow their GDP? How do we keep their people alive longer? And whether that's the work he did in river blindness or HIV, what I saw Merck and Bristol Myers do back in the day, these were tremendous transformations for societies that, few people made those decisions and stuck to them. And I admire him for that. And I admire him for the work he's done as a scientist, as an innovator, as a philanthropist. But he just donates millions of dollars and gives back to society. And I think he was just an honest, ethical, science-driven executive that we don't always have a lot of. So I admired him and really try to, if I could be half the man he is, I'll be a pretty proud person when I look back at my career. And I think the other person I'm always curious is Albert Einstein, right? How much was he just crazy and insane and just, witty, and how much of it was his brilliance and communication and people? And, could you work with someone like that in a way that helped them be even more successful? He was so freaking smart. I would just love to have met with him as I meet, Martine, who's my counterpart at United Therapeutics, and Al Mann, Elon Musk. These are some of the most visionary people you could ever meet in the world. And, I had the luxury to meet a couple in person over the years while they're still alive. And Albert Einstein's one of those guys I'm like, wow, he must have been just like them, but just even 10x. And so, it would have been amazing to have dinner with him or even see if you could hold a conversation with the guy. I'm guessing he was off a little bit and probably hard to have a conversation with, but I think it'd be fun. And I forget the movie I watched that he was in, that you probably remember this a couple of years ago, it came out, and he was just wandering in the field and,
Oppenheimer.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was great. It was just, I was like, it probably was who he was, right? I'm guessing it wasn't that far off.
Yeah.
And I admire people like him that made a huge difference in the world, positive or negative, but I think made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And I think so interesting because he was so smart, but also because of the era he grew up in, being Jewish. Politically, he was pretty switched on. I think
Yeah,
you'd have some seriously cool conversations with him if you could
yeah,
keep up.
yeah. I'm not sure. I'll try, but how's the weather? Hope I can tell me how it got created.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer. But look, pleasure to have you on, Michael. Absolute pleasure. And please, everyone, like, subscribe to the BioHub, and thank you again, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, Max.